You got introduced and everything. We're sharing mics. We have 2 mics for 3 people, so we'll share. We already got to know each other well enough to share mics. Well, Kim, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You are someone that has been on our must-have list for a while. I've watched your career over the years, and we're so excited to have you here this morning. Welcome to Worcester. This is how Worcester does it, with panoramic views of our whole city and a beautiful audience and crowd of partners and committed people to our community. So we're so thankful that you're here and bringing your expertise to the work with Ron and I in our exclusive podcast.
I love it.
Yes, more subscribers. We'll let you know how to do that soon. But this is our second roadshow live taping. So this is official. Yes, we're on the road. Yes. So I'll start off with the first question. And what Ron and I usually do is just ask our guests always to share a little bit about their origin story. And you're welcome to share whatever you're comfortable with, whether that's personal, professional, or a blend of both. But we always ask that because we obviously know a little background about you. We pick our guests very specifically. And I think your work and the work that you do is so relevant here today. So just excited to hear a little bit more about what you're offering here this morning.
Great. Well, thank you, Marybeth, and thank you, Ron. Thank all of you for being here. I am just thrilled to be here. This is great energy in the room. I've just gotten back from DC for our first ever DC Action Summit that EMPath did. We had 41 organizations. People came from 19 states plus District of Columbia. And to follow that up with this is quite amazing. So I'm just thrilled to be here. I want to acknowledge all of the awardees. Your stories are so inspiring. I want to thank Eve for those powerful words. It's just great to be here. In terms of my origin story, I start, I guess, at the beginning, and that is really before I was even born. I think of it as my freedom journey. And I think of the shoulders that I stand on. You heard Eve talk about trailblazing not being a solo act, and that there are many people involved in that. And so I am proud to stand on the shoulders of my ancestors who did their own freedom fighting work long before I was even born. I, like many Black Americans, my origin story, at least in this nation, is in the American South. My family escaped slavery in the South via the Underground Railroad and made their way to Nova Scotia, Canada. And so my great-great-grandfather, Esau Janey, was involved in the African Abolition Society in Nova Scotia, and he was also involved in the African Union Society in Canada. And this is in the 1850s. This is prior to the American Civil War, prior to the Emancipation Proclamation. And I think that's really important because he made his way, or his ancestors made his way, it's not clear to me yet, to Nova Scotia, to Freedom Land. But rather than laying back and enjoying his own success, he understood what many of us in this movement understand, and that is none of us are free until all of us are free. And so I come from that stock, and I'm very proud of that. I'm born in the I'm born in the midst of the civil rights movement of the 1960s. I've got a big milestone birthday in 2 days.
All right.
Yes, it's 30 times 2. Woo! Yes. And so I grew up in the 70s and 80s in the city of Boston. Saw a lot growing up in the city of Boston in terms of movement history, living next door or one street over from Mel King, in the South End at my great-grandmother's house, seeing my father and the work that he did. So all of that got poured into me as a young person, as a kid. So it was no surprise that I became a community organizer as a young adult, and a strong advocate myself around education policy, then determined to run for office. And now I sit here as the president and CEO of Economic Mobility Pathways. And there is another origin story parallel to that in terms of my connection to this organization as a young person who needed support and services like the work that you do here in Worcester. And I found that in EMPath. It wasn't called EMPath at the time, but a very full circle moment to now be leading that organization as president and CEO more than 40 years later. And so I'm very proud, happy, and thrilled and excited to be here this morning with all of you because there's so much work that continues to need to be done.
Everybody pass me a mic. So, Kim, you've seen a lot, as my middle school sons would say. We were both born in the 1900s.
Yes.
But since you've opened up with that and the powerful origin story that you did, I wanted to first ask, as we're at Resiliency Awards and talking about resilience, for you who have operated, they losing them, but I'm good. Okay, we back. Operated at the highest levels of government, a lot of times in spaces that weren't built for folks like you. A woman in a lot of male-dominated spaces. A Black woman in a state that's 80% Caucasian. And so I wanted to talk or ask you, how do you balance the strength of resilience? And what would you share to our community here about the ability to be resilient, but also prioritizing healing to be able to continue to do the work when just showing up as yourself is an act of resistance?
Listen, absolutely. So you can just say that part again, because that is in part the answer. Just showing up is an act of resilience. And as I said, I stand on very strong shoulders and had a lot poured into me. As a Black woman, I've really have had no other choice but to keep it pushing. And so this notion of self-care and balance in many ways are another struggle for us to encounter in terms of how do we really do it? Because, you know, I come from a place, particularly of the time I grew up, who I am as a woman, as a Black woman. You make a way out of no way. That's just what you do. You make $1 out of 15 cents all the time. And so sitting down to take a break and rest is a newer concept, but it is a vital concept. It is vital to our humanity. It's vital to our future existence. And so we have to, because it's a slow, painful death otherwise. And for generations, I think we, pat ourselves on the back for being so resilient. I'm looking forward to, in this next chapter, a softer life. Mm-hmm. I am looking forward to embracing that self-care, because that too is an act of resilience. That too is how we get through it. But it is not easy. It is not easy to recognize when no one else is going to do. I mean, there are mugs that they make for us. Mm-hmm. Oh, F it, I'll do it. Like that's who we are. This is the podcast that's trying to grow its following. So maybe I should have just dropped the F-bomb.
That's a nice reel. You know what I'm saying?
And there are little ways that you show up in the world. And I'll come back to the story of entering the mayor's office. Little ways that you're reminded of how male-dominated that space is, from the podium needing to be cut down to the carpenters, and shout out to the Carpenters Union for building a riser for me. I had to have you guys didn't see that in all the press conferences, but there was a riser behind the podium. There were just little things from your detail and who is surrounding you in terms of your police detail, and making sure that there was a woman on my team, for all the ways that your purse, Marty Walsh didn't have a purse. Not that not to my knowledge, he just put his wallet in his back pocket. It's different from a woman. We carry purses. Those little things, never mind all the big ways that you're reminded, and all of the isms that still exist in our very male-dominated patriarchy world. So important that we take time to take care of ourselves so that we are building up our resilience for a world that can be hostile to women.
Thank you for saying that, because I think as a head of a nonprofit that does a lot of work where people are coming in every day with their own experiences and maybe in crisis. Our staff is also absorbing that too. And that's why the EMPath work has been so critical for us, not just with our clients, but also trying to implement it with staff as well for an empowerment coaching tool. At EMPath, and as CEO, how are you bringing that into your everyday work with your own staff and making sure wellness is part of this and health is part of this with your team? Because I think I worry every day about the staff who show up at all hours of the day, 24/7. Often I find that out later. And they're out literally in the streets right now. And on Saturdays and Sundays around communities. And so their need for care is so important. But how do we, you just talked about how you're modeling that. How are we infusing it in our own work every day too?
It is very important because that is the workplace and your home are sometimes where we forget those important boundaries. It's important to try to model it as best we can. We have a well-being committee on staff. And so there are little ways that we try to take time to be supportive of each other, to make sure that we are putting in workplace policies that are benefiting our employees. I'll share something. I don't know that you'll want to hear this in this format, but soon after getting to the organization, I got there in the middle of 2022. And so there was a lot of holdover from COVID and how people were showing up for work. And our administrative staff had one day in office as their way of working. And this is, a year kind of after the height of the pandemic and after the pandemic had been lifted, but this was a holdover. And our direct service staff, they're showing up in person every day. And so there was this you already have the COVID fatigue, if you will. And then there was this added tension of some employees enjoying a privilege of remote work where others didn't. And so one thing I had to figure out fairly quickly is what is our new way of working together? And where we landed, Marybeth, was a 4-day work week. And I listen, and I am confident, I'm going to say this directly to camera, I am confident that we are the only human service organization in New England that offers a 4-day work week for its employees. This maybe you'll get more
for thought. Thank you, Kim.
Subscribers here. If there's any others out there watching this, please subscribe and follow the podcast. We're going to grow the following here. And it may not work for everyone, but how it works for us is that we have a 4-day work. We did have to modify our overall work week. We went from a 40-hour 5-day to a 36-hour 4-day. So we shaved 4 hours off completely. And, that can feel like, how do we make up that? How do we keep that productivity up? We're now a year and a half in. And this is across the board, including with our direct service. Now, our administrative staff can also take remote days. But having this 4-day, this 5th day off for all staff was a game changer in terms of trying to help level set some issues around equity. And so that is important so that people can get their doctor's appointments done or whatever kinds of appointments they may want to get done. Maybe it's more time in your house and getting things done there. Maybe you're finishing up a degree and you need an extra day to do your schoolwork. Whatever it is, it's the gift of time. I think I realize as a leader, particularly as a seasoned leader celebrating a big milestone birthday, that is the precious resource that we can't get back. People can raise more money, people can get more people, you can hire more staff, but the gift of time, it's like sands in the hourglass. So that is an important way that we try to balance things out for our employees and provide a workplace that is one focused on supporting our staff, supporting their success, mentoring our staff, developing their growth. We have many folks who are new in their careers and we want to see their success.
Thank you. I am, as my team knows, I have God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth to listen twice as much. So I'm amenable to options. Certainly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they've been doing 4 days.
They've been doing 4 days since the beginning.
Yeah,
so
since
not the
beginning.
only.
Yeah.
I like it.
We do quarterly spa days too. So once a quarter, we take our.
All right, right. Resiliency teams on that for sure. And we do. I was going to say we added a couple extra wellness days, but I can't compare right now. But I think the challenge that I see also is, because we work with, prenatal moms to elderly people, right? So in providing access to services equitably too, most often being in person is that particularly when people are multilingual, we have many multilingual staff. So the accessibility as a form of equity is always in my mind too. So I'm trying to strike that balance is challenging. But again, amenable to conversation.
And this is in no way meant
Yes.
to.
No.
We're just figuring out ways in this new post-COVID, post-November 5th world.
Yeah.
And it's important that we take care of ourselves.
No, I agree. And it is something that our team has talked about and looked at different ways to rework schedules in order to make things work for clients and for staff. And I see it more now in the stress of staff, especially right now when our funding is uncertain, when there's a lot of things happening in the community that are really scary. So I do see that in the eyes and frankly, the hearts and stomachs of staff too. So it's definitely something that we want to think about. That is, if you don't mind keep going and I'll hand it over to you. You mentioned, you growing up in Boston in the 70s and 80s, taking the helm of Boston sort of in the COVID time, and you were president of city council, coming into EMPath in a time that is pretty full of tumult. What are the differences and what are the same things that you're seeing in terms of the juncture of policy that has happened, things that have not worked? I think, and Eve spoke to this, systems are not working. Systems have not worked for people for a long time. Isn't new in the last 100 days. But I think that's what we're trying to do here is not just be disruptive, but understand why it's not working. And what are the junctures you've seen in your life that you're like, we had good intentions there, but this did not work. And then you compare the tumult in Boston in the 60s in busing to experiencing a worldwide pandemic to now the disaster happening now. What are your observations?
Yeah, I think a distinction that I would make is while these systems may not be working for the families that we are working with, these systems are working exactly how they were designed to work, which is to lock some folks out and many folks out at the expense of a select few. And that is how our systems are designed to work. So they are working the way they're intended to work. What we found in the COVID era was a more of a willingness to support families and their basic needs across the board. No shame, no blame. Let's get resources out into communities. People have lost jobs, they've lost incomes, and we understand this across the board. And certainly there are some communities that were harder hit, depending on how vulnerable you were, or how marginalized you were prior to the pandemic. But what happened was this pouring in of resources, whether the ARPA dollars, we saw, the child tax credit expanded. We saw all of these ways and then we saw the difference of that. We saw how childhood poverty decreased under this post-COVID world. And now all of that is being rolled back. And so it's not going to be a surprise when we see the childhood poverty numbers go up again because those supports aren't there. Sadly, we're not taking those lessons of how do we help families just around basic needs. And instead, we're taking what we know works because we just saw it, and we're taking those things away, again, so that we can give tax breaks to the most wealthy in our nation. This is what those policies are doing. And they're very clear about that. They are very clear about that. And so the work of WCAC is really important. The work of EMPath, the work that we're all doing in this room is important. And it's in your name. It's community action. We've got to keep doing the work to make sure that our families have their basic needs met And beyond that, the bridge to prosperity. How do we get beyond just basic needs and making sure that families can thrive, that they can live out the American dream? That's what we say we're about. It's time we live up to that.
Thank you. Yes. So I want to switch gears a little bit because I put on some colorful shoes to try to rock with y'all. So can we get a shoe pick? Can we get a shoe pick? Somebody hit us with a shoe pick? Yeah, see that? We known for the shoes. Kim, I wanted to follow that question up with the idea that systems weren't designed to. I never thought words like equity and inclusion would be offensive, but they weren't designed with that in mind. How do you build a culture within EMPath and within your community that is focused more on collaboration than the individuality that is so prevalent in our Western cultures? Because that is not looked at as we think about indigenous cultures, whether it be here as Native Americans or those that are coming from the continent of Africa and throughout the world. The idea of this individualistic kind of prevents, in a lot of ways, I feel, our nonprofit partners from being able to work together. We're constantly trying to box each other out because I need this money, you need this money. And so the idea of how do we collaborate better in those spaces, especially in this time of crisis, opposed to this individualistic idea of like, I need to close in on myself and figure this out. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think you and Marybeth have a great example of how that can work. I think Eve spoke to it in her remarks. None of us can do this work alone. There is plenty of work to do, first of all. So this whole competition for scarce resources, it all comes out of a scarcity mindset. When we understand that we are stronger together, that is when we can make, I think, more of an impact. And it is when we see the results that we need. At EMPath, we have a global learning network called The Exchange. And one of the beautiful things about The Exchange is of all of the members that are part of this exchange, and we've got 1,000 organizations worldwide that are concerned about economic mobility. Many of them are using our mobility mentoring approach in their home communities. We're in 35 states across the US and under 10 international cities. The beauty, though, is EMPath is not sitting at the top of the food chain on Mount Olympus somewhere saying, thou shalt do this, and then everything will be perfect. We're not doing that. This is truly a global learning network where we learn from each other. We learn from our members. We share out with each other. And so we do our conference every other year to share more of that learning with each other. We provide the TA and support that folks are asking for. This DC Action Summit that I talked about earlier, recognize that we've got members all over the country who too might be concerned about housing, who too might have concerns around childcare cost and how to put together their family network in such a way that they can work and go to school and do all the things that they need to do. So it's not just unique to Worcester or to Boston, that there are people and communities all across our nation. And how do we leverage that was the question that we asked ourselves. How do we continue to learn from each other and support each other in this work? The other thing I will say is I think our philanthropic community, where many have seen those opportunities as being opportunities to compete, they are now trying to create anyway opportunities to collaborate. So again, there are enough resources in our philanthropic community, truth be told, and there's plenty of work. We should not be competing against each other for finite resources to do one little thing when all of us benefit when we can work together.
I know Marybeth wants to follow up on your time in DC, but before I wanted to ask you about, for those who may not be familiar, can you talk, what is mobility mentoring?
Yeah, so this is our breakthrough coaching model. It centers the participant. It's a framework that any organization can use as long as there's that one-to-one relationship that happens in direct service. Some people call it the client management system, where they're a staff person and that client, we use the word participate because people are actively participating in their own well-being and climbing the economic ladder. They are not problems to be managed. They are people who are, for themselves, trying to navigate complex systems that are not designed to help them. That in fact are designed to keep them trapped in their trauma. And so having that one-to-one relationship with a trusted coach is so central to this work, one that centers that participant and what their needs are and what they hope to accomplish for themselves and their families. We have a bridge to economic economic mobility. We're going to get to the prosperity piece. And there are 5 pillars to our bridge, including family stability, career, education and training, as well as well-being. So well-being is such an important piece because if you're perhaps got a new job, but you can't get out of bed in the morning because you're depressed or anxious or whatever you might be going through, that new job and that great income isn't going to benefit you. Same thing if your childcare isn't working. Maybe you've got the new job, but you just got a huge rent increase. And so now you're not going to see your fact and you're further in the hole than before. So all of the things have to work hand in hand, just like in all of our households at home. And so for us, we see ourselves not so much as a co-pilot, but as the headlights. We're not the GPS. We're not going to tell you where to go. We will help illuminate a path and what the various paths might be. And when those barriers pop up, and they do in everyone's life, how do we strategize to eliminate the barrier? When the opportunity is here, how do we leverage the opportunity? That is the benefit of this one-to-one coaching approach. And it is something that is shareable. And so to your point or your question earlier around competition and how do we get beyond that, we're not hoarding this. We want as many folks to be using this as possible. We believe in it. We have seen its impact. We've seen the impact in other communities through data collection, and we're testing the model. We have a randomized controlled trial underway as we speak. We're partnering with the Boston Housing Authority as well as the Cambridge Housing Authority, and those are where all of the participants come from. And half of the folks are getting the mobility mentoring, which is the treatment group, and the other half are in the control group, and they receive the basic services of being in public housing. And so our researchers are at Harvard, MIT, Notre Dame, and we hope to know in the next couple of years what we already know to be true. We hope that they will affirm what we know to be true. Yes.
Well, I have to say, we've really appreciated the adaptability that EMPath has afforded us. For example, we have a youth bridge. We were able to adapt it for our youth 14 to 25. And the open source nature of what you do, I think to your point of competition, Ron and I can go on and on, episodes 4 through 20, about the challenges of being under cost reimbursement contract and being held to the fidelity of owners of that don't always understand the work on the ground. That I would implore, as you mentioned, philanthropy, is that funders need to go through this too, to really understand the trust that needs to be bridged to the agencies doing this work. Because we are trying to afford that to the people that we're partnering with on the ground. And it would be beautiful to be afforded that as well, to be trusted and respected to do the work. So I would say this would be a mandatory course for funders and anyone that's giving from philanthropy to private to public funding, because I think that's where some of the things were held back as a result of that. So we are coming to time, but I want to make sure if there's questions in the audience, that if anyone has any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. And asking you a last question, as you were in DC last week, what is your call to action? What are you calling for? What can people in this room do right now?
I mean, again, it's in your name. It's community action. And I would say, beyond what we were doing before, I think it does require a new sense of urgency, but it requires that resiliency. It requires us not letting up, not giving up the fight. these are strange times, but it's important to recognize this isn't about one individual. This has been in centuries in the making. And so it is important that we just remember, where we come from, what we're made of, and let's keep doing this work.
Thank you very much. Anyone have a question, a comment, a call to action? The floor is open. All right. That's okay.
Is there a hand down there? Nope.
Anyone down there? Yes, Jean.
Something that I think we all know and has been repeated often is that we have our power here, but we have family, friends throughout the country, maybe even throughout the world, and we need to reach out to them and say, join our action, make it broad, because sometimes we live in this bubble of Massachusetts, and we've got to think outside of that. We have a great delegation in Washington, D.C. and at the State House and, maybe even in some of our own communities locally. But we've got to bridge to others throughout this country for that collective power and hopefully collective impact.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
I don't have a question, but Kim, one of the things on the podcast is that we're known for dad jokes. But I'm not going to do it. But we talk about resilience. I just want to say how resilient I was on getting here today. Because I was driving and I had a flat tire. I put the donut on, but I made it, even though there was a fork in the road.
Nope. You didn't.
More dad jokes, episodes 1 through 20 also. Kim, thank you so much. Thank you for laughing at Ron and with Ron. There's some good dad jokes everywhere around. Oh, yes. You got a dad joke? No. Janice, could you pass this behind you? Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much for, everything you've spoken about, especially for me, because it resonated a lot. The question I have, I'm Marrio Macharia, and I'm very curious to know, in your position, I'd like you to share something about the culture in leadership, like issues in culture, like how you handling that. And I don't mean just, race and all that, but also now that we have the Gen Zs and millennials, and it's as we try to reconcile all these ideologies and all that we stand for as we move forward in the same direction. So one thing, what's the challenge around that? And just your general insight.
Well, what a great question. I think as I think about my own organization and the amazing staff that I have, it is a staff of many, many, many generations. And so it's important for leadership in particular for it to be rooted in a listening and a learning mode always. For me, anyway, I think when you get to the point that you know everything, then exactly what's there left to do, really? So always recognizing that there is more to learn, and that there are learnings that can happen from your peers as well as from the vertical. It's important to show up with core values. The context will change, the people will change always. And so how you stay true to self is being rooted in your core values. If you're not, you're gonna blow with the wind when the context changes and the people change. So it's always important to be rooted in what grounds you. For me, there are core values around equity, justice, being in a place of gratitude. Those are really important things that I try to embody each day, no matter what is going on around me. Being able to tap into joy, which is the beautiful thing about joy. It doesn't matter what's good. It doesn't matter that the sky is gray. Look, we recognize we're on the top of the tower, and that joy is coming from a place within. And so showing up, being hopefully that person that can inspire folks when they're down. There is what I've recognized in this moment, particularly for folks who are less seasoned in their careers and just starting out. Folks are terrified about what is happening. And easy for me, who has seen, I can lean on the fact that my people have seen worse, been through worse. And so maybe there's a little bit of comfort I can take in that, knowing that I'm going to get through this and get beyond this. But for others, maybe not. Maybe they don't have that. And so how you hold folks in this space, in this moment, and not in a way that coddles and enables, but to just reassure that we, as tough as it might be, there is another side. We are going to get to the other side of this.
That is the beautiful, perfect way to end this. And thank you so much for that question, because I think that's something that we're all challenged with. I can certainly say that I am in trying to be myself and learn from others too. So thank you. That was a beautiful way to end our morning, and so resonant with everything that we're doing this morning. So, and thank you, Ron, for being part of this. Kim, for coming all the way to the Woo. We welcome you back anytime to Worcester. Thank you so much. And thank you to your team too, that does amazing work with us. We really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody here for celebrating everyone. May is Community Action Month. And so that bacon part's coming back. The QR code is up there. If you're up for taking some additional action, that QR code is for donating to WCAC. And we'll be using that for helping our neighbors with housing and food insecurity, especially those impacted by recent events in our city of Worcester, and working hard together. So thank you all for being here this morning and celebrating. Congrats again to Eve and all of our honorees this morning. And I hope you all enjoy your day and take some of this with you for the rest of the day and the rest of the week. Have a good morning.
You're listening to The Ripple Effect, a nonprofit imperative with Ron Waddell and Marybeth Campbell. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you on the next one.